Hey, how's it going? All good. Welcome to a new Rocketbot class. Today we're going to look at how to use the logical while command and the logical break command. Alright, so what are while and break used for? Basically, with while we set up a loop of work or actions until a certain condition is no longer met. That is, we need to repeat certain actions until a condition changes. So that's when we use a while. For example, here I have a little example set up where we have this table, right? And I'm going to use the table. I only need to read the first 6 rows, that is, all the ones here, but let's pretend this has, say, more than 20 rows, and I only need these 6. So, I'm going to read all this data. From this data, I don't need to display the entire list of items, but only those that meet the condition of being from Argentina. Therefore, I'm only going to show the ones from Argentina, and obviously, I'm going to leave some out. In this case, I'm going to leave out the one from Brazil. So, the first condition will be that the while loop repeats until the counter reaches this number. Now let's take a look at all of that. But anyway, this is the introduction to what we're going to do. So, here basically what I do is open the Excel file. Obviously, as is proper, you should do validation, but for this small example, I'm not going to do that. Let's count the rows. Here we count the rows and see that there are 7. Therefore, remember that I'm not going to read up to row 7, but up to row 6. So, I'm going to determine that this, we already saw this in previous classes, from A2 to E rows. I'm going to get all the data. So, when I run it, I'm going to get the following. In data, I'll get the entire list of elements. Notice that it starts with Carlos and ends with Dido Suarez from Brazil. If we look here, Dido Suarez is the last entry, right? Now, we're going to set the counter to 2 because basically what I need is for it to start at 2. Now let's see why. And we're going to use the for loop precisely to go through it. Along the way, we'll also explain a brief introduction to what a for loop is. Why do I use a for loop? Because I have a list of elements that I need to iterate over. That is, basically, I'm going to take DA data, which I just extracted, and I'm going to iterate through it. In each iteration, what's going to happen is that, look, let's go here again. This is a list of lists. Notice that there's a bracket declaring the list, and inside there are lists within lists. Here is the first list, inside the main list. So, what it's going to do is basically grab everything, and in each iteration, first it takes the first list, in the second run it takes the second list, in the third run it takes the third list, and so on. Why do I want to do that? Which is what I'm doing in the for loop. Basically, to grab the information and start manipulating or classifying it, which is what happens in the next step. It takes exactly the iterated list, that is, the list that gives us the data. And what I'm doing here is, basically, I assign each element of the list to a variable. Look, I need to get the first name, last name, price, and country. First name, last name, price, address, and country. And this way, I classify it. Price, eventually, comes as we'll see it now. It doesn't come as an integer, but as a decimal. So, this is the regular expression to convert it to an integer. There's also, for example, the replace method, but I decided to use this one. Alright, and here comes the interesting part. While counter here is 7, as long as the counter is less than 7, it has to execute a series of steps. In this case, what it's going to do is the following. It's going to say, if the country is Argentina, which is what I need to display, then we're going to show this message on the screen, which we'll see in a moment. And then, what it's going to do, since it's inside a while loop, obviously the counter, we have to keep incrementing it. But as long as it's in a while loop, if I don't stop that while, it's going to keep running infinitely, endlessly, let's say. Therefore, what I need to do in a while loop, when I've already managed to execute what I want to execute and, let's say, automatically, that while doesn't break on its own, what I need to do is force it to break. And that's why I use break. Because break is basically to stop that loop, since I've already achieved the goal. So what I'm saying here is, going back a bit to what we covered in the previous class about if statements, I'm using the condition that the country has to be Argentina in order to display it. If it's not Argentina, then the loop is broken immediately. Remember that if this condition is met, it executes here, which basically just displays it and then breaks the loop to move on to the next element, or it simply doesn't display anything and breaks the loop to continue with the next element. Therefore, after that, what the counter does is add 1, because remember that it starts at 2. So, as this whole operation is being executed, what it's going to do is, first, let's go over it again. The for loop is going to go through the entire list of elements so I can get the list of data. Right. Then I sort that data to C to manipulate it later. Then I start the while loop and say, well, if the counter is less than 7, then execute everything below. And what's below is an if statement that uses a condition where I determine that if the country, in this case, is Argentina, then what I should do is display the message. If not, it breaks the loop and I'm going to look for the next element. And the same with the next element. It will make the comparison and show the message if that's what it determines. So let's close here. Let's run the whole robot. Let's see. It opens Excel, searches for the L elements, and what it's going to do is go through the first element. The first element, what it says is it Argentina? Yes. So I display the message. So I click accept and it will automatically search for the next element. Now the next element is Argentina, so I display it. The next element is the United States. It doesn't display it. Notice that it's not showing it. It's going to E, it's going to process the next element. It's not Argentina, and it only shows Argentina again once it gets to element 6. It won't take element 7 because what I basically did with the while loop is set it so that the counter is less than 7. Therefore, the while loop didn't get to take the one for Brazil. And here in this example, I'm, in a way, taking what we learned in previous classes and seeing how it can be combined with the new logical commands. Notice that between logical commands, there is or can be some connection that helps us build the bot more efficiently. Alright, I hope this was helpful and I'll see you in the next class. Thank you very much.